Hey guys, wanted to tell you about this awesome door we're working on. This is from 1810. It is from the East Sandwich Meeting House in Cape Cod, Massachusetts. And this was made up in Maine and floated down and reassembled on site. But you can see they're all wrought nails, strap hinges, and the nails are clinched over, which those nails held on these battens on the back side. And they would be struck simultaneously in front and back, or they'd put a piece of iron in the back and then make the nails curl. See, curls like that, and they do it with the grain like that, so it actually can hold the wood on. You see how it's rolled over like that. So there was a lot of weather exposure, so the wood had gotten rotten around the nails, and the nails are still okay. And we have a little bit of cupping on the nails, on the boards. On the other side, the cupping is a little bit worse. And then we also have this split going all the way top to bottom that has destabilized this area. So what I set up to do, you can see the cupping right there. What I set up to do is to clamp and try to flatten out some of these boards, so then we can put epoxy around the nails and reconstitute the wood. And hopefully, not hopefully, we're not going to compromise the original nails or the boards. We're probably going to fill in with some consolidant and then fill in some of the bigger checks. But the smaller checks like this, we're going to just fill in with paint, and then eventually maybe some linseed putty. So anyhow, here we go. So among the other challenges with this door, there's a Dutchman, right? And it is in sort of where the lock set would have been, and they want a Dutchman. Now we have a lot of damage here, but we can see there's the original bead right there, and then the tongue and groove, you can kind of see on this side. So what I did is I made this piece so far that I'm just going to go there, and this piece that's going to go there. So because I didn't want to do a horizontal, I felt like, I don't know, I should keep it to this. But I'm going to do a scratch bead and see how it works out. All right. So the scratch bead. So the goal is to try to make that tiny little bead that you can't make with a router bit. So this was taught to me a long time ago. It's really cheating. So just put a stop on the edge, screw through the bottom. It's poking up just a little bit, right? And so that gave me a little bead to work off of that now I will shape a little bit. So after using a bit of 80 grit sandpaper, Spanish cedar, I should say, because this is very soft wood, so it enables it to really shape real well. But here we have a nice little bead, and up. Matches pretty well. So let's start to do some more assembly. So we prepped all the pieces. We have our beaded piece here and the groove part there. The pocket where the old box lock was is cleaned out for the most part, but I didn't want to mess with any of the original tooling in there just because I think it's cool. And then on the back side here, this is probably a 1950s repair or so. And, you know, aside from being a little sloppy, it's good, and I'm gonna sort of mimic that. So we've got a first piece here with the tongue, and if you look, that's where that piece ends. So that's where it wants to be. And then the tongue part, even though they're capable of being joined to each other, they're not, because the original position is there. So that kind of gives us the final dry run of the Dutchman. And yeah, I'll probably epoxy it on there just because I want to seal this pretty well, and I don't want to just pepper it with nails or screws, because we can see what all those nails and screws did to at least this edge piece. So I'll probably use some of the same epoxy to get this in here, as well as getting this edge closed up as well. So epoxies. Epoxies are generally the same, we'll call it that. There are different speeds in which they dry and things, but pretty much there's enough compatibilities that sometimes you can cross mix. And in this case, we use the West system and the Abatron wood epox. Big fans of both. They each do different things. And in this case, we're going to try to fix that door. And I want to bond sort of that crack right there. So in order to bond that crack, what I want is the adhesive, right? Not the fairing, but the adhesive. So I'm going to mix this stuff, which is silica, into the liquid and fill that joint, and that's going to give me a bond. Bad stuff about this stuff, can't sand. This stuff, the wood epox as well as the fairing filler, can be sanded. And the nice thing, we don't use this as much anymore because Abatron already comes in its own consistency, sort of like a stiff peanut butter. So anyhow, that's what we're gonna do. So I wanna do my best to kind of keep the epoxy off the face. I could have put tape around it, but so I'm just gonna try to get it in the joint, and this is the adhesive. So let's slowly get it in there. Now on the other side, you can see I put a little tape, so nothing should bleed through. But it'll probably settle a little bit because there's enough viscosity in it. Hopefully make it drop. Now, the key to this stuff is I can't sand it, right? So I have to be mindful of the fact that I don't want to put a lot of extra on the top because I really don't want to scar this old wood. And I can even wipe off what's on top with some acetone and such. But see, I'm really trying to get in there. See how it's like flooding in front a little bit? So I'm trying to make sure I'm going to get it all in there. So filled it all up, and then I brushed it. And then now I buttered it up with a little bit of the adhesive and the West system. And now sort of just place it in. And then I'm going to let it set, and then later we're going to put some more epoxy up there. This is kind of what I would call a sloppy Dutchman, because I didn't try to cut too much, or I didn't cut any of the original material out, and you know, so it's a little loose of a Dutchman, but nonetheless everything is lining up. So there is what I would call the sloppy Dutchman, where there's a little bit of space that is left. And it's mostly a plane problem at this point. And I'm deliberately leaving in certain planes, like that lip and things like that. And we'll have to figure out how to make smooth transitions. Really smooth transition, just meaning a jump from one to the other because it's an honest repair. But that's a sloppy Dutchman. And then we can see our joint that we were hoping to have good adhesion with the adhesive filler for the West system. Seems to look pretty good. So we'll see what it looks like after it dries. So the goal was not to slather this whole thing with epoxy, but just to limit the epoxy to where it really needed it. And you know, some of the checking and things, like I said, will be filled with perhaps linseed oil based Sarco putty or paint. But we tried to really limit it, even where that crack was all the way up, because we don't want to put this whole thing in a plastic bag. We still want it to act like wood.